Hello everybody and welcome to Manchester Explorer. Although today we are not in Manchester, as you can see. I just followed the rail trail from the west side of Manchester all the way to New Boston Center. And I decided to get some footage of me riding the rail trail back to Manchester. But first I'm going to give you guys a little tour of New Boston, New Hampshire. I know that none of this relates to Manchester, but while I was out here, I had my camera on me and I decided to just film my ride home. You know, as it's fairly decent content. It'll probably take me about an hour to get back to Manchester. So this video will be a little bit long, but there's a few historical sites that I will stop by and post some old pictures about on the way home. But right now, I'll give you guys a quick tour of New Boston, New Hampshire. I have spent a lot of time in New Boston as I had friends in this area, as I spent most of my 20s and well into my 30s in this area, as I used to kind of be in a party crowd, let's put it that way, as I drank a lot of beers out here. And I've also lived out here for about, I don't know, about 4 years of my life. So I'm very knowledgeable about New Boston, although I'm not going to get into any fine details about it. But I'll give you guys a quick tour of the center of New Boston, as this is a very quaint village located in New Hampshire, obviously. And it's a historical area, as you'll never see a Rite Aid or a grocery store or a McDonald's in this area. There's not even a gas station at the moment. So if you do decide to live out here, to get anything, you got to drive about at least a half hour away. But along this river, as you can see, a lot of the buildings were built right up against it, as it's quite beautiful. And I actually rented, I'll try to get out of the sun here. And that red building directly in front of me was once a mill. There used to be a dam there that got washed away. A few years back, there was a pretty good sized flood here. But the furthest building you can see ahead of me, which is gray, I used to rent half of that building out. I lived there for about 2 years, and it was kind of cool to have a river in your backyard. You know, when the river was roaring, it would literally shake the whole building. It was kind of relaxing to sleep in. And to my left is Dodge's store. And that store has changed hands over the past 10 years or so, as it's a little different now. I'll just keep it at that. There used to be a very active deli there that used to sell a lot of great sandwiches and stuff that's no longer present for some odd reason. This was a cafe, but it seems like it's out of business right now, which is kind of sad. I think COVID probably killed it, unfortunately. But as you can see, it's a beautiful building and it's set right on the river. And this is the Parker mill that I was just talking about a little earlier. I'm not sure what this mill produced. I don't recall. Yeah, that gray building directly in front of me, I lived there for a couple years. The landlord who lived adjacent to me had COPD, as he was in bad health, and he ended up selling the place. I also rented out an old farmhouse up on South Hill Road. I lived there for a little while as well. I love living out here, but like as I said, there's not really any work around here, so if you live out here, you gotta really enjoy commuting, because you're gonna do a lot of it. But as you can see, it's a beautiful area. All the buildings are all wooden. You don't see any vinyl out here, that's for sure. Yeah, I've spent a lot of time out here. Many years. kind of drab looking now because all the leaves are gone. And that, unfortunately, that's what happens when you live up north. All the leaves go and everything kind of gets drab looking. Yeah, that's the Dodge's country store. Obviously it needs some work. Needs a paint job badly. But we're gonna take a left on this bridge and we're gonna head onto the rail trail. Like I said, it's about an hour ride. Sometimes I do it in about 50 minutes if my legs are feeling really good. The good thing is on the way back, it's downhill as you're biking downstream. You're following the flow of the water. It's an absolutely beautiful village, it really is. It's one of my favorite towns in New Hampshire. And we're only about a half-hour drive from Manchester. It's really not that far. But right here is the remnants of a train station. And ironically, a friend of mine rents this out, one of my old drinking buddies. I assume he still is. Yeah, he's still here. I can tell by the vehicles. But this used to be a train station. And I'll post some old pictures of it, as I'm sure there's some exist. As I wasn't really planning on making a video of this today, but there are some photos of that building that does exist. Yeah, that was my friend Bob's house. He was an old drinking buddy of mine. I used to hang out with a large crowd of people, but I had to walk away from it about 10 years ago as it was just out of control. Too much drinking and partying and whatnot. Great group of guys, but I had to walk away from it. If I would have stayed in that lifestyle, I wouldn't be going on a 30-mile bike ride today, let's put it that way. I'd be a 220-pound bloated mess right now that's completely out of shape. You know what I mean? I'm not completely sober. I like having a few beers, maybe a couple times a month. But the sober lifestyle is a lot better than, being drunk 3-4 nights a week. And half of that crowd, to be honest with you, half of them they're dead, to be honest with you. A lot of them are gone for various health reasons. A lot of partying. But I have no regrets, as I had a lot of fun. I'm just fortunate that I was smart enough not to get into drugs, because I knew a lot of people that did. And a lot of them aren't with us right now. But enough of that. Yeah, the bike out here from Manchester wasn't that easy, as I was biking directly into a headwind for pretty much the entire ride up to Goffstown Center. Well, up to about where the trail starts in New Boston. It was just a strong headwind, about 20 miles an hour. So it was a little bit of an effort to get out here. But right now, it's mostly downhill, and I'll have the wind on my back, so this should go pretty quick. And we're going to be heading to the fairgrounds, which will be coming up very soon. And here are the fairgrounds. I also know the person who lives in that building on the right. If he still lives there anyway. He used to run the transfer station. A good guy. I've drank a few beers with him too. I forget his name. I think his name was Jerry. I just can't recall. It's been over a decade. And this town used to hold, it was called the barn dance. It was like bring your own booze, so we used to all be able to come party in this building right here. So everybody would get tanked and we'd all just drive home. It was kind of funny. I kind of miss the small town atmosphere, I really do. Just, it's such a better community out here than in Manchester, for example. But eventually I'll be moving out to the country again, as the city is getting rather old, in my opinion. As I moved back to Manchester, I don't know, about 6 or 7 years ago now, it might be 8 years, for various reasons. But I've spent most of my life, you know, I grew up in Manchester from 1976 to 1986, and I spent most of my life living in Goffstown, Ware, and New Boston. And like I said, I had to move to Manchester. I needed a place to live real quick, and I kind of got planted there, which isn't a bad thing, as I grew up in Manchester, so I kind of went full circle. But I am not staying in Manchester that much longer, let's put it that way. But yeah, this used to be a railway, obviously, and this leads to Goffstown. This is my favorite rail trail of them all, as far as the ones that I've experienced. I'm not a huge fan of riding bikes on rail trails, as I find it kind of boring because all you do is go straight. But I've been out here, I don't know, probably 6 times in the past 4 months or so. It's just a nice ride to get some good cardio in, to build up leg strength, so when I actually go mountain biking at 48, I'm still fairly good at it. There was a historic marker right there. There used to be a mill present right in that area. As New Boston has a lot of small streams and whatnot, and there's a lot of small mills in this area. I actually videoed one a couple years ago to show the remains of an old dam that was in the woods. I'll leave a link in the description, as it really hasn't had many views for some reason, and I believe it's one of my better videos, so please watch it. I can't tell anyone exactly where it is, as the landowner wants to keep it private. But I'll post the link to it. To go over it briefly, it was an old mill site that was a dam that held the water back for a mill that was downstream. But during the winter, they'd close it off and they'd build the water behind it, and they used to harvest ice out of it, you know, before we had fridges and whatnot. And ironically, the house that I was renting, the old farmhouse in the South Hill area, had ice harvesting saws and equipment in the barn, and there was also an old carriage with heavy-duty wheels on it that was likely used for ice harvesting. So it's kind of interesting that I lived in that, and I put 2 and 2 together. Along the way, there's various areas on the right where next spring, I'm going to start an adventure channel also on YouTube, as the bike I'm riding is set up for bike packing, as it's got mounts on it so I can put racks on it and bags and whatnot. So I'll be having a bike packing channel as well, where I'll do some stealth camping and whatnot. So that may be interesting. And you'll see a little bit more of me in the videos. It's not that I'm camera shy, it's just I'm by myself, so it's kind of awkward for me to film myself. And to my right is another train station, which I believe is called the laying station. We'll check it out real quick. I think there's a little bit of history on it right here. Let me take my helmet so we can get some footage of this. Take off my helmet rather. That's the first station, the train station that I showed you, where my friend Bob lives. There's a little bit of information about it right there if you're interested. And this is the train station that we're currently at. The laying station, which was active up until 1931. I believe this area has some serious flood damage, and I think the railroad, I'm not sure when the railroad stopped, but it was quite some time ago. But anyway, I thought I'd share that with you. And we'll spin around and take a look at this building while we're here. Oh, let me drop my post down here, my seat post. Oh, I'm in the tough gear. All right, let's go. You know, it was a very basic train station, obviously. I didn't even know these books were here. It just shows you what type of community this is, as they have a book sharing station here. Could you imagine this in Manchester? Somebody would light it on fire. This area would be covered in graffiti, litter. There'd probably be homeless people living in it. It's just a night and day difference, and we're just 10 miles away from Manchester. That's all it takes, you know what I mean? Just a completely different world. Some beautiful views here as well. It's a lot nicer when the foliage isn't, you know, gone, but you still get the good vibe of it anyway. Very pretty area. There's a lot of tributaries. There are a lot of streams around here. There's a lot of footpaths and bike paths. Although they're very hilly, they're very hard to navigate on a bicycle, as they're more suited for hikers. New Boston's a very hilly area. It's where the hills start in New Hampshire. The western portion of the state gets rather hilly. Not many mountains, but there's a lot of hills. And I'm waiting for an email for my this particular bike that I bought. The company is called Esker, E-S-K-E-R. They're a very small company, but they build some very nice steel and titanium bike frames. And the color I chose, it's like a green and orange. It's a cool looking bike. But the bike paint has chipping issues, as the paint is very soft. You know, a few of us made some complaints about it on the Esker Facebook page. And eventually, you know, one of the owners responded mentioning that they've had a few complaints about the shipping issues in this particular color. Of course, it's the color I chose. But anyway, they had us fill out a warranty claim. Oh, it's been about 2 months now. We haven't heard anything back about it. I get a feeling it's in litigation, as they likely have lawyers involved, as they're probably trying to pin the blame on the factory that painted the bike, which is located in Taiwan, so that way Esker doesn't have to take the hit for it. But anyways, I imagine they're going to be sending me another bike frame. I'm leaning towards hoping that they just give me a credit so I can purchase a different frame, so I don't have two of the same bike. But we'll see. But if they send me the same frame, I'm just going to build the other bike as a single speed. You know, there's going to be no gears, no rear cassette, no derailleur or shifter, and I'm going to put a rigid fork on the front of it versus a suspension fork. And I'm going to use it mainly for, you know, my Manchester Explorer videos rolling through the city. So we'll see what happens. It's a very small company. I can't imagine they sold a lot of colors. I mean, a lot of bike frames in my particular color. I'd say maybe 20 of them. But they're all going to get recalled, as there's no way they're going to make us disassemble our bikes and have them shipped to get repainted, as that would make no sense. Other than that, I love this bike. It's an Esker Hayduke. It's more of an adventure bike, but it is a mountain bike. It's not a very aggressive bike. It's not made to, you know, bomb down the side of a mountain, but it's great at like cross-country riding, you know, tight, twisty, rocky type of terrain, as it turns on a dime. Climbs hills awesome. Its only weakness is going downhill, but it's also very comfortable just riding along a rail trail such as this. It's a great bike. Esker Hayduke. I'll promote them, that's for sure. I was gonna get a suspension bike, like rear suspension, but 90% of the time you don't even need it. The only thing you need suspension for is if you're a bike park fanatic that likes going over jumps and stuff. Otherwise, you don't really need it. Especially in New Hampshire, as most of the trails around here, they're so technical that you don't get much speed anyway. And this is the steepest hill of the day. How you doing?
Good, how are you?
Good. The only hill, really. But yeah, I'm gonna have another bike soon. As the paint does chip very easily. After my first ride, which was, I think it was actually on this trail, to be honest with you, what happens is your tires, you know, they'll kick up pebbles which bounce off your frame. You know, and after getting home and looking at my bike, I noticed several large chips, which aren't normal. As I've been riding bikes, especially mountain bikes, since, I don't know, 1991 or 92. And I've owned various painted bikes, and I've never had one chip that easily. So it is an issue. I kind of feel bad because it's such a small company, but I paid a lot of money for this frame and I want the issue resolved, as I work very hard for my money and I am not rich. But we're almost in Goffstown, and as you can see, you can get moving pretty good on a bicycle. And this is a mountain bike. If I had like a gravel bike, I'd probably be doing about 3 to 5 miles per hour faster than I am now. And it's a great sport to get into. I know as we get older, we become lazier, especially after like the age 35, 40 years old. You know, it's hard to get in shape. It really is. But get an e-bike, you know? Who cares? It's nice to get out and just get off the couch. I took about 10 years off of mountain biking, as I bought a full suspension bike around 2012. I bought a Trek EX8 or 9, whatever it was. But after a month or two of riding it, I started developing this hip pain on my right hip that wouldn't go away. It would keep me up all night. So I ended up selling the bike, as I figured I couldn't ride bikes anymore for some reason. And this was like 2012. And about 2 years ago, I went to Saber's thrift store, and there was a bike there for $60 that I purchased. It was a Kona. I had the wrong stickers on it and whatnot, but it was only $60. But long story short, that bike ended up being a titanium frame that's very sought after. It's a 1991 Kona Hey, that's what it's called. But it's a very sought after and collectible bike for some reason. The frame alone retails for like $800 to $1,000, which is crazy, as it's rare and collectible. But anyway, whoever owned it previously took all the original components on it, which would have been like vintage racing bike parts, and he replaced it with like these cheap, you know, bike store junk, like low-end Shimano parts and like junk rims and stuff. I'll post a picture of it. But I ended up, you know, rebuilding the bike. I went a little overboard. I didn't build it to original condition as I modernized it somewhat. But that's the bike that got me back into the sport. I put about 2,000 miles on that Kona. And I eventually, you know, bought this frame and built this bike. I still have the Kona, but I'm likely going to sell it. As when you get on a modern bike, you want nothing to do with those old bikes. You just don't. Modern bikes, they just ride so much better. I was in denial about that until I got on a modern bike, and I was sold instantly. So yeah, get into biking, man. It's fun. It's a good sport. It really is. As I was saying, if you're like over the age of 35, you gotta be patient. It's gonna take you a month of dedicating riding for your legs, start getting into shape. But once you're in decent shape, you can just, I can bike all day. I can put like 60 miles on a day and not even think about it. And I'm 48 years old. But right now we're in Goffstown. This is the worst part of this rail trail system, as you do have to go on Route 114 for about a mile and a half or so. And it leads back to Goffstown Center. Where we'll be right back on the rail trail. I can never be a road cyclist. It's so boring, you know what I mean? So boring. I can never do it. You know, I like twists and turns and hills and bumps and stuff, you know what I mean? It's great exercise though. Those guys are typically in great shape. I much prefer mountain biking or urban cycling through a city, which is also fun. Yeah, this section going in the opposite direction was a little rough with the headwind. I wasn't moving very fast, that's for sure. Section, I apologize. Not a whole lot going on here. To my right are the Uncanonic Mountains, which are the smallest mountains in the state. They're both at about 1,000 feet. Yeah, if I build that other bike, I mean, eventually I'm gonna get a bike that's more suited for, you know, rail trails and pavement. It'll roll a lot better. As right now I have knobby tires, as I'm sure you can hear them. Budget's gas. Budget's gas. Budget's gas is everywhere. Ahead of me to my right was also, I believe, a train yard. You can get a quick glimpse of it up here. As Goffstown Center used to be a train depot. And I'll show you guys a few old pictures of it as I'm rolling through. But on my right you can see all those commercial buildings behind these houses. That was all affiliated with the train station at one point. That area anyways. And this is Goffstown Center. And there's only one Goffstown. There's no other town that shares that name. that stone building right there in front of me.
Are you looking for the Goffstown Cemetery?
No, no, no. I'm just making a video of me riding from New Boston to Manchester. Thank you, though. It's funny, sometimes people will recognize me. Are you that Manchester Explorer guy? Sometimes I'll get stuck talking to them for like 20 minutes. But I spent a good portion of my life in Goffstown as well. And Goffstown has literally doubled in size since when I first moved here. You know, probably around it in 1985 or 1986. I recall when a lot of the roads were still dirt roads. There were still a few operating farms back then also. And we'll take it right here. Yeah, but the train used to run down this road right here, and it would go straight ahead. It's a commercial area, and they probably didn't get zoning to continue the rail trail that way. That's why there's that detour that I just took on Route 114. But right now I'll share a few photos of this area, as this used to be a train station or train depot. And the train station building is now a cafe. A very popular cafe, especially when it's nice out. This town gets very busy. And there it is. And here's an old photo of it from back in the day. Probably a couple of them, actually. Especially on the weekends when it's nice out, there'll be a crowd of people here. The Goffstown Village Depot, which was built in 1880. And I believe it stayed active up until, I think it was 1976, as there was a train trestle right here with a covered bridge directly in front of me that caught on fire and it burnt down. There's a lot of rumors as to what happened. Some people say it was accident. Most people will say it was arson. No one ever got caught for it though. And while we're here, I'll take a little detour. I'll show you guys this area. I want to show you guys this dam that's directly in front of me, which is likely going to be destroyed within the next few years. Obviously, it used to power that factory on the right and the grist mill on the left, which is that gray building. And if you don't know what a grist mill is, it's a mill that used to, it would grind down, what do you call it, grain into flour and animal feed. And here's a picture of it from back in the day. And I should be able to sneak in between that blue building to show you guys the dam. And here it is. And that red factory, that brick building across the river, you can see where the inlets were for the water. They used to power the turbines. It's kind of neat. But yeah, this used to be a grist mill. This brick building directly across from me was once a high school. It was converted into a middle school. I actually attended 5th and 6th grade there. And my class was one of the last classes to go through there, as the place was closed down, as Goffstown built a newer middle school. This was during the late 80s. And here's another old photo of the covered bridge. And this building to my right has needed a paint job for as far back as I can remember. But as you can see, as I always say, these old houses don't rot. Even though this hasn't been painted in, I don't know, 40 to 50 years, it's still in excellent condition. As that old growth lumber is much better than anything that that's being used today. Modern wood it's garbage, it really is. Unless you pay a premium price to get the old growth lumber. Now we'll get a shot of Goffstown Center while I'm here. I don't want to get too involved into Goffstown as we have to get back on the rail trail and get to Manchester. And that's where the train trestle was, where that granite foundation is. Goffstown is not a very bike-friendly town to be biking through, as you can see. I wasn't going to just jump in that traffic. We'll take a quick left here. Sorry if this video is getting a little long, but this is where the train trestle would have been. And there's also a historic marker that I'll zoom into so you guys can at least read it. As you can see, it went directly to that train station that's in front of us that we passed a little while ago. Oh. Hopefully you guys can see that. So after this train trestle burnt, you know, the railway system that headed west from here was all done. It was finished. But I think the train serviced this industrial area up until the early 80s, if I can recall, which I'm about to show you. Obviously this was built just a couple years ago. Actually, I think it finished this spring. It's kind of odd having an apartment complex in the center of Goffstown. And here's a few pictures of what it used to look like. And they managed to save the chimney, which is cool. I was gonna ride through there, but this video is getting too long. Yeah, we'll get back on the rail system. This is, I believe, East Union Street. It's where the school bus transit area is, the bus stations. School buses, rather. This little house to my left with the black metal roof has just recently been built. It's a cute building. It was very well built. I've been watching the progress of it over the past year. It's built right up onto the water, but like I said, once that dam goes, that waterfront property is going to change. Although the Glen Lake Dam is going to stay for now. I give that one 20 years, as it's very decrepit, it's in rough shape, so I don't see that even lasting another 20 years. So that one's going to be going down too. So this large body of water, although it's low right now, is also going to be gone. I give it 20 years tops. But anyway, we're on the Goffstown portion of the rail trail now, and let's get hauling. This trail is often busy with people walking, but it's in the middle of the afternoon on a Monday. So I should be able to pedal quickly through here. Usually you gotta go kind of slow. There's Glen Lake again to my left. And that dam is going to stay. That one's not going to be destroyed at the moment. During the summer, you'll often see people using this beach right here in front of me. A quick little breather. I've actually biked up that trail right there, but it goes nowhere. It pretty much stops on top of where that gravel section is. And this is going to lead to another train yard. On my right, you can see the remnants of the other railroad bed, as there was a split a little bit behind me. As this area went straight to Manchester, and the rail bed to my right went to the train yard. This section to my right was obviously recently built up or filled in, as I believe there's a storage unit area up there. That's a good way to blow your money in a storage unit. It's kind of funny. I knew a guy that, you know, he got divorced and he ended up moving in with his mother for, I think, 1.5 years. And he called me one day, as I own a work van. He's like, "Hey bud, you mind giving me a hand to get my stuff out of storage as I found my own place again?" I'm like, "All right, cool." You know, so we go to the storage unit. You know, on the way there, I'm talking, shooting a shit. He was paying $150 a month to rent the storage unit out. And this was like 3 or 4 years ago. But anyway, we go to the storage unit, and the stuff he had in there was worth at best $300. And I kind of gave him a sarcastic comment. I'm like, you realize you just paid a year and a half of storage at $150 a month for just a few $100s worth of stuff. You know what I mean? So if you're storing stuff, please put that in consideration, as a lot of times the stuff that you're storing isn't even worth the amount of money that you end up paying to store it. And if you're storing it for like 2 years, chances are you don't need it anyway. So just get rid of it. There's people that end up paying, you know, $5,000 to $8,000 worth of storage fees for a couple years for $1,000 worth of junk. You know what I mean? Simple math. That's why people are broke nowadays. They don't know how to manage their money. I don't make much money, but I know how to save money. I just took like almost 2 months off work because I have money saved and I can afford to. You know what I mean? People have $50 in their pocket and they gotta spend it. Gotta go out and spend it. Save your damn money. Half the crap you buy you don't even need. God. I am frugal though, I will admit that, I really am. That's how I was brought up. To my right, they're building something here as well. Probably a bank, another gas station. Who knows? Probably a dollar store. I'm just guessing. Gotta be careful here, sometimes people are pulling in and out of this garage. And to my right is where there was a train yard here. That's where that train track that I was mentioning a little further back split off to, and it ended up right here. As this, I believe, was a little depot of some sort. And there's Magoo's, which is a little food stand. It's seasonal, but it's been around forever. It's kind of dying. As I recall coming here when I was a kid, and my parents would take me and my brothers here. You know, they serve like deep fried food, seafood, hamburgers, stuff like that. But this place used to be packed on like a Friday, Saturday, and Sunday night. Or even during the day. It's not the same as it used to be. But it's still open at the moment. I actually have a friend who owns the mechanic shop in this little plaza here. Justin Chicoine. Very good mechanic. Wrong gear. Back on the rail trail. We're getting there. Another 15 minutes and we'll be on the west side of Manchester. Maybe 10 minutes, depending on how good my legs feel. As this is about a 30-mile round trip. I did about 15 miles yesterday. Yesterday was even worse. It was windier yesterday. I apologize, but I had to hit the rewind button for a second as I missed a few things, as I wasn't really paying attention. But this field directly in front of me was once the women's prison, which got torn down, I don't know, a few years ago. And the only thing that remains of it is the backstop where the softball field was, as this field was once surrounded by high fencing with barbed wire on it. And also to my right, up on that hill, there once stood a hospital. I can recall it as it was abandoned and it was in ruins, but here's a picture of it. I think it got destroyed, I believe, during the late 80s or early 90s. I can't recall exactly. But directly in front of me, there's kind of a good story here. I always thought this was the old prison complex, but what this was called the Hillsborough Poor Farm, and it's kind of a sad story. As this place used to be a place for housing for people that didn't fit into society, you know, such as criminals, you know, people that were mentally and physically handicapped, slaves, just people that didn't fit into society is the best way to explain it. It wasn't a mental asylum, but it was similar to it. But what this was, it was an operating farm. They grew their own vegetables, and there was also livestock here. But from what I briefly read, I read this a while ago, but they were treated very poorly, like they were animals. And I believe this was built during the early 1800s or mid 1800s. And I always thought it was a prison, but it wasn't. It was a poor farm. That's what they called it, the poor farm. But I can recall they used to have haunted houses here during Halloween, obviously. And we used to enter into this building right here, and it was kind of creepy in the basement. So yeah, this was a very sad place in American history right here. And I'm about to show you where the graveyard was. But down this little access road right here, this leads down to the river, and it's actually very beautiful down there. It's a nice nature area. So I recommend anyone to check it out. It's a little bit of a hill though, so you gotta walk or ride your bike back up it. But yeah, this was once an operating farm. I think I can recall people working out here during the 80s. I'm only 48, so it's kind of a weird memory, but I'm not sure if this place was operating then. I know it was converted into, I know UNH had something to do with it. It was some agricultural classes or something going on here. But all these red buildings were once held, you know, livestock and whatnot. But here's the cemetery. The Hillsborough County Cemetery. Dedicated May 23rd, 2001. It doesn't really say much about it, but this is where they buried all the people that obviously passed away in here. And what's sad is there's no names on these graves, they're all numbers. And there's a group of people that I looked into it, and they're trying to look into who was buried here. There's really not much exists as far as information. So all these people were basically outcasts of society that were thrown into this building. It's kind of crazy. And I believe there's something like 700 graves here. So there was 700 people that, you know, lived and died here. I'm sure a lot of them ended up getting out, but a lot of them didn't. And right here to my right, there was once a building right here. It looks like it was a building that would probably house pigs, is my guess. But anyways, I thought I'd show you guys this real quick. And this area right here is not natural. This is all built up. So this was all filled in during the 1800s, which is very impressive. I don't know how they filled all this dirt in back then without heavy equipment. But as you can see, this is rather steep, and that's a lot of dirt. And And down there is where that path I was just showing you leads to. There's an open field down there, and it follows the river. It's kind of has a serene feeling down there. It's very nice down there. But yeah, as I was saying, this was all filled in. This is not natural. As you can see, there's a stream down there. I don't know if you can see it, but the stream goes underneath this giant mound of dirt. As there's a what do you call it? A tunnel or a cul-de-sac? Is that the word? Which was built first, and then they filled it up with sand. I don't know how they did that during the 1800s. That's so much sand. It's crazy how they used to work back then. But they, you know, they managed. They did have some steam powered equipment back then, but still, that's a lot of labor. And as I was saying, this was all farmland back in the day. I can recall corn being grown here, I know that. I recall the cornfields, that's for sure. Those have been gone for quite some time now. And if you're still watching, if you made it this long through my ranting and rambling, thank you for watching. This is more of a personal video for me, something that I can recollect on, and you know, when I'm 70 years old. But if you decided to watch it, thank you. This area is kind of cool too, where they blasted through the ledge here. During the summer when it's like 90 degrees out, this little area right here is like air conditioning. It's always about 5 degrees cooler as you're technically underground. It's a good place to take a break when it's sweltering warm out, and the sweltering heat rather. I'm making pretty good time. I'm not biking as hard as I can as I'm talking and whatnot, but as you can see, you can get around pretty quickly on a bike. Good old potato power. All I ate this morning, I had 2 eggs on a piece of toast and a glass of coffee and a big glass of water, and I was out the door. This little lake here, I forget what it's called, but the dam that's downstream is likely going to be destroyed, as this little lake is going to be going bye-bye soon, unless something happens. There's going to be a lot of angry people that are going to be losing a lot of waterfront property. And at the very end of this video, I'll show you that dam. As it used to create power for a small factory. Obviously the factory is long gone, so the dam really serves no purpose right now. It does have a tiny electric generator to it, or a turbine, which doesn't generate that much electricity. But they want to build a fish ladder there. And if no one invests the money to build the fish ladder, the dam's going bye-bye. I think it's just an excuse to get rid of the fish ladder. I mean the dam, as it's rather old. just saw a gravel biker. I love it when they see me cut off and go on a trail like this. Again, that's why I ride a mountain bike, because I can go anywhere with it. Not that this is rough terrain, but it's a little harsh with skinny tires. A lot of time I'll see like a group of gravel riders and I'll keep up with them. I've always had very strong legs. I'm getting old though. And a lot of willpower. I don't know any of my friends that could do this, not one of them, which is kind of sad. Nothing to brag about, but they're all couch surfers now. And 48 years old is not old. Far from it. There's guys in their 70s that are still doing this type of activity. You just gotta keep up with it. Again, another large mound of dirt that was built up. Crazy. This was also all cut out as this hill used to continue. Used to connect rather. Most people don't see that kind of stuff. I'm kind of a weirdo, ain't I? I just appreciate history from, you know, 100 plus years ago, as people were more impressive back then as they are now, as far as ingenuity, working with what they had. Nowadays we just push a button or move a lever and the machine does all the work for you, which is a good thing, but it's much more impressive what they were doing 120 years ago. Much more impressive. This area was also all built up. This is not natural, folks. All this dirt was added here, every grain of it. This little guy, I see him walking all the time. A little Asian dude. He probably works somewhere in Goffstown and he walks this trail to get home. But on my right is that dam I was talking about. Along the Kelly Street Bridge, I call it. I'm not sure if that's the right name, but this dam's gonna be going by soon. Bye-bye pretty soon. Unless somebody invests into it a lot of money for little to no return, as the power station there does not make much electricity. But right here, there used to be a small factory. There used to be a tall brick chimney here. I think the chimney was there up until the 90s. I'm not positive, but for some reason I think I can recall it. I'm probably wrong though. But we'll take a left up here as there's a few pictures that I want to show you on a history marker. That's if it hasn't been graffitied yet or smashed in, which is what happens in Manchester. We can't have nice things in Manchester. So I mean, as soon as we cross the bridge, you can start seeing graffiti everywhere. This area just got cleaned up, but it was heavily littered not too long ago. As there's a group that goes around and cleans up this park. Like those two posts, those are usually standing. Someone smashed them, so now they're on the ground. This bench was on the ground a little while ago. Somebody just propped it back up. Everything gets destroyed around here. Oh, there's some graffiti on it, but we can still see the pictures. Amazing. It wasn't like this in New Boston, was it? But anyway, this is what used to be here. And that trestle we just crossed over, that footbridge, was once a covered bridge that burnt down. It did get rebuilt and it stayed in use up until I believe the early 80s, as I was showing you that the trestle in Goffstown burnt down. But the railway continued on up to where that Magoo's restaurant was. That stayed functioning for a little while. And as you can see, the bridge up here, I used to have a curve in it, which is kind of strange. But anyway, I hope you enjoyed this long video of me biking from New Boston to the west side of Manchester. Well, anyway, later.